Hello everyone, it's Friday night and it is time for the Weekender once again. And on this week's show we have Medieval Mayhem, Mace Face Miniatures and Mekana G-Men. We also have Middle-earth, at least as a prize. From store.ontabletop.com we have the Hobbit Hunt for the Arkenstone for one lucky subscriber to the channel. To be able a chance to win, you need to come over to ontabletop.com and pop a comment below this video there. Do that, and you may be lucky. Now sit back and relax, because your weekend starts here. Hello everybody and welcome to the Weekender. I'm joined this week by John and Justin to take you through a week's worth of gaming news and goodness from across the internet. Before we kick into this week's show, there is some rather sad news that people may be aware of if you're on social media and the like and follow it, and possibly not if you don't do that thing. It's an easy one to miss. At Salute this year, Paul Sawyer took ill and was wheeled out of the building just shortly before we were due to go and interview him, actually. There hasn't been much since April made public, but this week past, both Warlord and Paul announced he's stepping back from Warlord Games. He has glioblastoma, so a brain tumour. And he in his own post, he reckons he's not going to be around within the next year or so, because it's rather aggressive. So it's obviously sad news for everyone. He's going to be spending time with his family. He has, however, said if he's well enough, I think he's planning on attending the Warlord Open Day at the end of September, so September 21st. Tickets for that were available, but they've sold out. But he's hoping to see a lot of the friendly faces that he's known since, well, let's face it, when he became the fat bloke, the big cheery fat bloke that everybody knows and loves from White Dwarf as that editor. He's been a big part of a lot of people's hobby for the last 20 plus years. So it's a sad bit of news, and obviously our thoughts are with Paul and his family at this time. And if people do see him at things like the Open Day or at a convention or whatever, it's a good time to say hello and thank him for his time and his contribution to the community as a whole, both from Games Workshop and Warlord, because he's always been a very approachable, fun fellow to have a chat with. Even if he did make me often kneel down to interview him, I'll forgive him that one. So obviously, a little bit of a Debbie Downer for the beginning of the show, but with it just coming out, we felt people would like to know, and they can share their thoughts with Paul and his family. On the subject of Warlord Games, Bold Action 3rd is upcoming. We will be talking to some of the guys from Warlord in the studio in the next week or so, and filming some bits and pieces for them for the release as well. So if you are interested in Bold Action, keep your eye out for that, because there'll be a whole host of content coming. John's even been handed some of the sprues to play with as well from the upcoming Bulge box. So with that out of the way, it's time to press on with the show and happier things. And we're going to start off, as always, with the Indie of the Week. And this week's Indie is one that I've been looking at for a while with the intention of getting Shay to the table. And it is Echelon Games Black Powder Red Earth. So it is a ultra-modern, or possibly near future, modern combat skirmish game. And if you haven't seen it, It sort of developed out of the love of the designers for tabletop games, because it grew from a host of computer video games, digital games, mobile games that they'd done. And it's an interesting little game for several reasons, which we'll get into in a moment. The setting itself is a fictional field, Middle Eastern state, where democracy has not taken root, and instead it's being used as a proxy war for the West on one side and the growing power of the Chinese on the other side. So within this sort of spectrum, you've got Western-backed troops and then cells who are advised by these Chinese military operating mercenaries. And one of the reasons I really liked looking at this was the way they've taken the comic and the computer game and the sort of the tactical warfare side of things and pulled it down to tabletop level to get this fascinating military style combat. How can I best this? Close quarters battles, that idea that you're doing room clearances and sweeps and things like that. And a lot of times when we play a skirmish game, it's very set.
Battlefield.
You have this idea that skirmish games tend to break down into, you've a 360 line of vision where you can see everything, or you've got a 180 line of vision. They take it a little bit further. The game mechanics itself are still relatively simple, but your arc of fire is 45 degrees to your right, but 90 degrees to your left, because most people are right-handed, and therefore you can sweep easier around one corner than the other, which lends a really fascinating dynamic to actually clearing streets and clearing buildings. As you can see here with the template, that the hip orientation, that's your little red, you just pop it over the head of the man, and then you can see what way they're going. So you have to think about cover formations, about how you approach buildings and actual encounters without getting into a position where you're not quick enough to turn to react to somebody coming up behind you because they've got you on your blind side, which I really appreciate, that level of nerdiness, for want of a better word, that you don't, I was going to say you don't often see, you just don't. Either skirmish games have 360 or maybe 180, but it's very nebulous. Some games will go draw a line across the shoulders, and you go, well, that kind of doesn't work even, because sometimes you've got shoulders are pointing in one direction, but the guy's looking in another, and the gun's just down, Anyway, so what they have with this is 2 expansions so far, and then the core game itself. But the game works with a map-based system, and this I think comes partly from the computer game versions, where it's a bit XCOM-y. You've got movement points to get around, and you're always dealing with rooms where you don't know what's inside the rooms until you enter them. And they've tried to recreate that in this respect, with what can be played as a standard war game. And you can build your tables, and some people have done some beautiful tables with these. But when you get the standard sort of box set, you get these lovely little schematic overlays of your board, and the game itself, there's a card deck that accompanies it that has scenarios, weather conditions, and board setup. And the board setup have these little rooms. So you go, well, this building goes here, this building goes here. And right off the bat, you can just play it like that forever. And it takes away one of the big problems of picking up a game for a new system, which is, what do I put my board
having
on?
a table to play it.
Yep.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you're going, well, I don't need to recreate an entire Middle Eastern town in 28mm, you can just do it with these little tiles, which is really cute. Although I have seen people do the full 3D, either scratch building everything, 3D printing, obviously there's a lot of that about as well. But one of my favorites was somebody had built in sort of balsa and plywood, like a reconstruction kill house style where spec ops would go to practice
to
before
train.
a mission.
I get what you're saying.
And they just use these schematics, so everything's just wooden and then, pegged to the floor type of thing.
Like
but it's very
the rooms
simple.
are kind of like made out of pallets and stuff, and tarps just to make it. Yeah.
And it's really effective as a gaming table. But at the same time, very easy to do for people who don't maybe don't have a 3D printer or don't have the time or skill set to do full modeling jobs, and still really effective and cheap, which is always good. And like I say, I'm at home to that. But I'll get out the tokens. Nobody needs to see 150 tokens. Let's have a look at the miniatures. The miniatures are 28mm, and they are, I'm going to say CO cast. I've got a set of them. They're listed as resin. They certainly have the feel and production of sprueless plastic casts. Very, in the majority of the time, very clean casts as well. Not a huge amount of cleanup, which is good because, as anybody who's worked with CO cast knows, it can be a rubbery little boy on occasions, and not always at home to that. But here you can see the Scorch team, and the Scorch team comes from the comic. The Scorch team's like the spec ops for the Aayari state. So these are the ones who are constantly in there doing the counter-terrorism sort of things. And I mean, we've seen a lot of modern operators from things like Spectre recently. And these I think are absolutely gorgeous as well. And within your team, you've got a certain amount of skill sets, be it, your sharpshooter types or people who have access to remote drones and bits and pieces like that. Breaching teams, maybe called assaulters. So you can do list building within the actual Scorch team to a certain degree as well. You're not just always going, well, here's a X-man unit with the same weapon and the same skill set. In a game where they have arcs of fire based on how your body moves, they obviously have an idea of how military operations should be played and prepped that they want to try and get across. And they do that quite well without drifting into super minutia and too much detail, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make sense, you have to take my word for it. But I do. I mean, the standard setup with night vision, the opticals on them, I think are really, really nice. In fact, I know they're really nice because I've assembled them. They're all sitting in next door. My plan is definitely to play this against Shay. I'm just saying. So you can see there the recce and the breachers and that sort of thing. That's how the miniatures come. Then you have the Hongbin Mercenaries and their advisory cells, possibly the words I'm looking for there. So these are the guys you'll be petting the Scorch team against as they attempt to remove the Western influence completely from the country. Now, the fact that the fictional Middle Eastern state that has collapsed is massively mineral rich, this is neither here nor there. I'm sure those two superpowers are both just getting involved for their own personal
they're doing it for the good of the people.
Yeah. But as you can see, that all of the figures are
the sculpts are absolutely lovely.
Sculpted. Nice amount of gear on them.
I'm loving seeing just the difference between the Scorch team and these guys. So the Scorch team, it feels very much, you are a hired ex-military operator to come in and do this, and these guys are more along the lines of we are more regimented military.
Well, the more regimented military are a bit more, a little bit wee. They're geezers. How can I best explain this? The Scorch team are Western backed and trained, but they are in the fictional world. They are the remnants of the Aayari Royal Guard, I think.
There's more freedom factory.
Went over to Well, they work for the democratically elected government / the royal family that had predisposed them. So they are the continuity within the country, whereas the mercenaries are, or not the mercenaries, the terrorist cells are a mixture of fanatics and scumbags who are either out for money or out for religious reasons, are attempting to disrupt and remove said government. So that's the sort of the standard core set. But since then, they've released a few other bits and pieces. You can pick up just the miniatures by themselves if you're not interested in the full game, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that in. What am I after? I'm after Phase Shift. Are you? Oh, you're not. You're the other faction miniatures. Anyway, there we go. So like I said, there's been 2 expansions since Black Powder was launched. This one introduced Phase Line, which has a couple of neat little things. So neat little thing, the first, new tiles, which is always good, increasing the amount of floorage you can run around on. The other thing they did was, and Warren obviously is a big fan of this, replace the little cardboard open and close doors with resin Adobe doors that you can then set up to show where you're going into and out of. The other thing is corner wall sections. And they've just done corner wall sections for a specific reason. It's because you then balance your tile on top of the other. So that's a riser, so you can get second stories when you're running around, which is cute. Although I wouldn't fancy putting my hand in underneath. But at least then you know where the buildings are and what you're going to be running into.
RPG map generators you can use that you could use to make some very cool and interesting building layouts. I mean, if you really want it, you could get the floor plans for Nakatomi. Just for a giggle.
The Nakatomi Tower. That would be interesting. See if McLean can sweep and clear past Hans Gruber and his friends.
Yeah.
So they added a couple of new troop types, including some very nice breaching weaponry. If you want to go blooping through a door. That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it. That's one way to go knock knock.
And then some suppressed SMGs as well.
Very nice.
One of the things I've found is color coding for the Scorch team. You may notice they've all got different colored shirts, and this was initially a stylistic choice by their painter. But since then, people in the community and in the Facebook group who play Black Powder are always going, my assaulters all have red shirts, my breach teams all have blue, whatever. The guy carrying the saw always has green. It's that type of thing. And it's become, even though they're not meant to be uniformed, because they're just wearing regular clothing and they're just doing their operative thing, it's ended up with a color-coded system that a lot of people have just gone,
I like the idea of that. It makes it easier to see what's going on the table.
Well, you can look down and know exactly just how you are when that guy comes around the corner. It's like, what guns he got? He's got a red shirt. I'm done for. Yeah.
But I mean, so, the posing that they've got on the miniatures is really nice, really dynamic. It feels purposeful.
Everybody's running and gunning or supporting friends. I've not seen anybody kneeling down. I don't think they've done a kneeler yet, because if you kneel down, somebody's going to come around the corner and do you up like a kipper. But again, both factions getting increased variety of troop types. They have a tendency, because they are a bit fanatical, when they lose men, it gives like a little impetus boost to the remaining men. So you get an almost, if they threw their lives away, then it works better for the rest of the remaining guys. So it keeps it balanced, because they're of a lower skill set than the Scorch teams that are going in to clear things out.
Turns into a non-religious specific banzai charge.
Yes. Look at that. I mean, all he's missing is a Toyota Technical, which is probably where he's taken that from.
That's exactly where he's taken that gun from. He's just popped off his Hilux.
There was actually a story I saw a while back. There was a plumber in America sold his pickup truck, had his like branding and decals on the side. Damn thing ended up in the Middle East, turned into a Technical with his business on the side of it. This poor man.
Good
really not.
Advertising.
I did not.
Advertising. It was over every news channel. That plumber,
poor fella.
God bless him. The remaining pack then, which is the most recent Spearhead, again increases the specs behind the game. So, like I say, there is card based, and there's also sort of campaigns. This gives you an idea of how boards are set up. So with the tiled floor plans, there are also little 2D cars that you can use then to block out your streets and that sort of thing, which means you can do your Call of Duty Modern Warfare maps like this quite happily. Yep. There's also a campaign system that's sort of baked into this, and the way I've seen it played, and War Corgi on YouTube has got a really good campaign game where he's been doing it, but you get your little scenario cards that just tell you what you're going to be playing, but then you take your map cards and they're dealt down in an order. And so your first game may be somewhere at the edge of town. So that's your tile that you're playing on. And if you succeed and you advance into the next map card, but then if you lose, you get pushed back. So you can have this to and fro as you fight through the town or through the city, and sort of power changes hands. So you can play a link campaign quite nicely within it. And atmospheric conditions also play a big part of it, because obviously you want to be doing a lot of this stuff at night, use optics, better gear, equipment to make up for the lack of numbers, and sort of going stealthily. But if you've got things like aerial drones and then it happens to be a rainy night or it's very sandstormy or foggy, then all of a sudden visibility and vision drops down massively as well. So you've got like a support deck of cards where you can be bringing in additional resources and you get in, do the mission, and then exfiltrate, backed up by whatever it happens to be. But then maybe your opponent has got the card that says, all of a sudden a massive squall comes in over town and visibility is reduced to near zero. Your optics are, as poor as standard night vision, and your helicopter that's going to come in to cover your retreat can't get airborne or can't come in for you because of X, Y, and Z. So the list building is really interesting with it because of those sort of card features.
I was going to say those layouts that you had up there, those would look really good if they were done in a neoprene mat.
Yeah,
that would look quite cool.
Flip down. Because I've got them. The boards are mounted on, or those map tiles are mounted on ePVC, like black ePVC, and it's maybe 4 mil, so it's the relatively 4 or 5 mil, relatively robust.
Yeah.
But yeah, having them actually as little neoprene tiles that you can pop down.
Here's your scenario map.
Although you know what could be cool to do with those.
Also,
you've got each of the building shapes, put it onto like a playing card, and then just randomly deal out which buildings are going down.
Well, that's similar to how the scenario deployment and map things are generated. You although it's a full table, it's not just individual buildings. So you can shuffle the deck and then deal it, and then it'll go building here, building there, car there, whatever it happens to be, and then find out where your objectives are going to be. But yeah, it's a game that I want to see more of. I want to get it on the table and get playing it as well.
I'd certainly like to see it as well.
How it pans out.
We need to for our games, we need to gather up all the wrecked cars from Walking Dead.
Yes,
for the the street layouts.
For the
I was
streets.
looking at
you
it,
could also
that'd
use
be
some of
perfect.
the elements possibly out of Crisis Protocol. Some of your incidental pieces.
Could do,
Bit
except
too
I've painted them
Fair.
like comic book. They're super, super bright. So
I'm sure we can mock something up.
they wouldn't look trashy in
Honestly,
real world enough.
If we're doing a table
Yeah.
for this, I'd love the idea of doing the training, area.
That's
Yeah,
the kill,
I like
kill
the
room
idea
sort
of
of
possibly
thing.
if we're doing a game of this, do that for it.
Let's break out the
Your
balsa wood
melon-
then. It's
Your
nothing
melon
similar
killing
to that.
skills are impressive.
The game itself, you can pick up the rules via the medium of Amazon, which is handy. So you can get it worldwide. The game is produced in its entirety in the US, which
It
means
has loud and proud there on the front page. So.
100%. Yeah. It does mean cost wise, it runs a little bit more expensive than some other bits and pieces that you'll see because they're not shipping it out third party to, Taiwan, China, wherever it happens to be. It's not being produced in bulk in countries far away. So there's a certain premium you pay for that. But then if you want to be a backer of something that's been produced exclusively in the US without things being mass produced and shipped in at a lower cost, then you're gonna have to sort of deal with that. But I think that as far as the game goes, because it's a low model count and low impact on the table, the fact that you're paying a bit extra for the buy into it isn't terrible, because there's enough in there to get your teeth into and play around with as well. But definitely one for people to take a look at if they haven't heard of it before. And I'll pop a link into War Corgi's YouTube channel in the doobly-doo below, because they've got a full campaign that they've been playing through for a while now, which will give you a good idea of how the game sort of comes together and the tete-a-tete of attempting to breach and clear through buildings in the middle of the night in Aayari.
Or
Aayari?
fish,
Aayari.
as the British Army call it.
Presumably it stands for something. You can tell us.
Fighting in someone else's house.
Oh, delightful. I like it.
I was holding that the entire segment. I was like, when's a good time to call it fish? But okay.
Oh, at any point, be total fish. Right. Well, with that, I think we'll move on and take a look at some news.
Coming to you from the center of Northwestern Europe. Covering board games, war games, card games, and all that you love. It's the news.
Okay, then, we've got a big chunk of fantasy news to kick things off. And this comes courtesy of the Antipodean Anthony from Traders Galaxy. Famous, of course, for Bot War, War.
Jerry's
Which
favorite.
is the song we all sing. Is one of my favorites. He does, obviously, a fantastic 8mm, 10mm divide. Pick your scale. Retro 80s cartoon punching bot game, which is fantastic, phenomenal, as getting a new edition this month, actually. However, he also does 28mm figures, which not a lot of people know that. He's got some really, really nice undead, but recently he has shown off a whole bucket load of dwarf warriors in preview. So this is going to be an upcoming range of 28mm dwarves, presumably metal, although he has yet to confirm that, but the undead are metal, as are some of the heroes that they currently do as well, although he has in the past had some of the 28mm stuff cast in resin. So time will tell, but generally I would imagine these will be metal. Not quite single piece, and you'll see why at the end. But there are essentially 3 or 4 packs of dwarf warriors. You can see one massive group here armed with huge axes, big proper bop your head style axes. Also rocking a very medieval look with their great helms, both conical and flat. So if you fancy doing a tiny little fat Templar Crusade army, you can do that.
That would be delightful.
That's 100% doable. There's also hand weapon, spear, and crossbow types that are also coming. Now, the regular warriors, if you will, here you can see are less well armored. They all have a very medieval feel to them. These have a more sort of sergeant at arms, not nobility kind of feel, though. But you may notice that the bodies are repeating in some of these cases, and that is because of the way Anthony's designed them to have sort of plug and play hands, which means you can pick up whatever you need and then go hell for leather for the horizon, whether it's crossbows, hand weapons and spears, or if you want to do something a bit different. There's also been a few character models, the Battle Pope being my favorite, with his little mitred hat. Now, currently no beard. These are work in progress, though, so I don't know if that means there's a beard coming, or if he's taken the unusual view of not giving his rune priest a beard.
Maybe.
But I do like the massive...
Maybe that's the mark of devotion
The
to
sacrifice.
Oh, shave it all off.
You have to make a sacrifice.
I just like the idea that
Makes
he's going
sense
to
to
beat
me.
the religion into you.
Oh, 100%. Woe betide anybody who attempts to stop the dwarves' march to wherever they're planning on marching to, because there will be all
Bless
manner
me,
of
Father,
hell to
for I
pay.
vouch.
And God takes an active hand when that rune priest is on the battlefield. Also, the fact he can slam the head into somebody with a huge metal mitre is probably not a bad thing as well.
Loads crossbow with religious intent.
He's not the only planned hero. There's the little Teutonic
he's
dwarf lord. That probably counts as a two-handed weapon for a dwarf, but I'm fairly certain it's just somebody's belt knife.
It's got that feel to it. The odd thing is the little chain booties. It's an odd design choice.
No, that's fine.
Nothing wrong.
Well, it's historically accurate for the initial knights. Before they went plate, they went full chain.
Full chain. Was that like 12? 11,
Something
12?
I personally had never seen before.
Oh, it's delightful. They normally have
watch
little
Holy
like,
Grail.
Not in many moons.
of course.
Yeah,
The historical document.
They're all full.
Not in many
full
moons.
chain.
Full chain. Oh, there's only one thing that has to be done there.
Yes.
You're going to have to go and find it. Rewatch it all. We'll be asking questions.
Don't give me homework.
Mm-hmm. It will be on the
I suck at homework
test.
in school. I suck at homework
Always.
in work. Don't do it.
There is also going to be some artillery pieces. The Dragonbane Ballista for dealing with any flying newts that may be working their way around the place. He's also planning on doing a big bombard cannon as well, in case some terrible bastards have put up a wall in front of you and you need to remove it, which is probably the best way of doing it. Just go ahead and just level that immediately, if not sooner.
Does they shoot the newts if they do not, in fact,
both of them
get
giving
better?
a thumbs up.
Yes. They are currently. They don't have to be.
No, the guy with the actual round is just sort of.
That's
dagger
his
behind
belt
his-
knife.
My bad.
There's a belt knife.
But I'll show you why. So this is the way he's sculpting them. And then there is going to be left hand and right hand sprues. Now, again, these are work in progress. So this will probably not be the final configuration, but there are empty fists for both left and right, which means you could even turn these into a Dwarf Blood Bowl team, because none of them will have any weapons. So you can just start punching your way to victory. Or, as you said, thumbs up all round. So there's a few other bits and pieces he's tinkering with. A battle standard bearer is hopefully on the cards, and he suggested he might even do a set of sort of sapper or engineer types as well. Which means if you're planning on playing something like Warhammer or the Old World, then these will cover a lot of the bases for those forces. Obviously, you don't have a Troll Slayer type contingent in there, but there is the possibility of adding some sort of, I don't know, dwarven fanatical pilgrims. There was like monk types running around the place, frothing at the mouth.
If I could make
shaved
one
heads.
request on this, it would be some pistols and like flintlocks.
Oh, you want to go black powder?
Yeah. Whenever I think dwarves, I always think you have guns.
I suppose only to fill in that old world segment.
It's not beyond the realms of possibility. I mean, the fact that the hands are separate means he doesn't even have to do them in the initial run. He could just come back in the future and go, here are some
riflemen,
matchlocky type things. Yeah. Although I quite like the non-black powder feel of them at the moment. I mean, if he has a bombard, that's enough black powder in there. Enough that will fire a massive ball at somebody. Was always good. Or I suppose they could just stuff a load of things down the barrel and just grape shot somebody's face off. Either is acceptable. Either is good. I'm not particularly adverse to it. But yeah, it's nice to see what Anthony's got planned for the fantasy side. The undead look fantastic. I have some. I'll be doing unboxings of them in the not too distant future. They've got a really classic Warhammer feel to them. So for people looking to sort of check off some boxes or maybe pick up things that will give them a unique army to play against their friends with, whether it's in the Ninth Age or Kings of War or Saga, for example. You don't have to go mass battle. You could go with skirmish, and there's still plenty in there. But yeah, terrific stuff from him. Staying in Australia, well, New Zealand, but technically they're Australian. They're more or less the same.
Yeah, but well.
Be careful.
Depends.
Someone might fight you over this one, Jerry.
Oh, they'd have to get over here first, and I'm too far away. What are Battlefront up to, John?
Battlefront are continuing their sort of, since the D-Day stuff came out, they're continuing with this sort of like campaign specific sort of box sets, and we've moved on now because we're into late summer, and of course we have to try and cross that one bridge, which didn't work out so well. But we have a couple of big box sets coming. So obviously the one we have here is the 6th Airborne. And in this, we got a couple of platoons plus their command, bunch of anti-tank guns, and just a bunch of happy things. A bunch of really happy British paratroopers.
I think the little canister packs, the objective-y type things, are an exclusive freebie for this box, but don't hold me to that. I know they've said on their website there's something in there that's exclusive, and I think it's those.
It would make sense that that's what it was. But yeah, we'll see.
I mean, if you're going to be taking a load of infantrymen and dropping them in to hold off against armor and all-comers, they've certainly brought enough guns with them.
Yeah. There's what? Is that 4 17-pounders in there? And then a couple of 6s.
There's 6s, yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 6s in the middle front. And it looks like 17s in the back. And there's what looks like a German 105 back left. Is that an objective marker along with whatever?
I'm not seeing crew on it.
Well, that could be. They could be objective markers. Well spotted, young man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that looks all good.
Yeah,
6th Airborne looked nice.
And then nice chunky company.
Yeah. So then the other one we have is the 82nd Airborne. The All Americans.
And they have the exact same two things at the back.
From what I hear. Yeah, so those must be
those must be the objectives.
Yep. So we've got some Jeeps in there. We've got more anti-tank because why the heck not? I always like that the American platoons are a lot bigger to consist of the company. There's a lot more stuff in there, which is pretty much par for the course. The American platoons and company sections were a lot larger. So yeah, they seem to have a little bit of everything in there. Kind of sort of good base for an army. It probably is essentially an army unto itself. You're probably looking at maybe about 90 points there, maybe 100.
It looks like a nice mix of stuff that you could then build off of.
Yeah, and
Truck
Add
in
a- add a
some
s-
armor.
yeah, add in some armor. I would particularly like just to see a box come with since it's Arnhem or Market Garden, do a
Yeah.
little bit of 30 core,
30 core.
some Cromwells, Shermans, and Fireflies. That'd be quite nice.
That's the thing as well, because obviously you can tailor this for either a specific engagement or just use it as a core section of an American force. They could be backed up by an American armored company, or you could quietly back them up with the British, specifically for the Market Garden run. Just have them
absolutely.
as an additional section. There's no reason to split them out that way. Also doing a few buildings, I see.
Yeah. So we have, what is that, 3? We have a manor house.
Which I think that one's based on the Oosterbeek.
Oosterbeek.
Yeah.
I've been to Oosterbeek.
Which
long
is,
time ago.
Again,
But I
very
haven't
handy
It's,
now.
it's nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the other two are a bit
It's
more
nice to see a
generic.
return of Battlefield in
Mhm.
the box, because they were always just nice and easy for laying out your tables, and seeing some new designs is going to make your tables a bit more interesting.
The only downfall I have personally for Battlefield in the box, maybe Jerry, you agree with me, it's the weight.
It is quite
Oh,
hefty.
God, yeah.
Because that Villar's Bocage table, it was probably a good quarter ton of terrain.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was measurable in the tons.
I have
So,
a chunk of it in my own personal collection from when they first released it. So the first 2 waves plus the manor house and the church as well. And it's in a couple of, there's under bed storage tabs, and you put your back out lifting them.
Yeah.
You just
As you
open it.
do.
There's it's about 20 buildings, which is probably more than I need for me. Although, as we discovered from our Villa Bocage game, probably about a third of what you actually need for that scenario. So yeah, they are chunky. They also can do with I know they come pre-colored, technically pre-painted, but they're so clean and shiny that they really do require some weathering. Because that just looks like somebody's been around it with a bucket and a paintbrush 20 minutes before you arrived. As does that cafe.
A little bit of it, a little bit.
But
of
the
aging.
designs again are simple enough that if you did want to
Wouldn't
just
go abyss.
go whole hog and reprime and recolor, you're not going to have a huge amount of work to do.
Yeah, I'd rather not, but yeah,
I would just weather them a little bit, a little bit of dirty down or something like that, and a little few washes.
I wonder if they're going to do the windows again. I own corner shops. Yeah, they didn't do. The cafe came later. I got the corner shops, and they put up downloads that contained. You could print them out in stickers or print them out on paper or whatever, but they were windows with curtains in them and shop displays and that you could then stick into those to make them look less like the black void sucking all the souls out of the room that they currently have,
or into the room.
Yeah, they were up on the Battlefront website many moons ago, so I'll have to keep an eye and see if they make a return. That Battlefield in the Box is coming back. It's one of the things I really wish they would keep the focus on. They tend to appear, and then if you don't get them immediately, good luck, skipper.
Yeah,
they're gone for a while.
Yeah. Oh, if you're lucky.
Yeah,
because most of the people who get them are because they're nailed on gamers. Once they get them, they never go out of their collection. So they turn up very, very rarely at best. But hey ho, what can you do? But yeah, I believe they are released on the 14th of September. So pre-orders are up now, but you can look for them very shortly. You can probably even pre-order them from store.ontabletop.com. Buy merch. Buy merch. No merch. Okay. Right. Up next, because I got all medievaled up with my dwarves earlier, I thought I'd have a quick look at Victrix, because they've been teasing people with upcoming Foot Knights. they've already shown off what they can do with the delightful cavalry. But these beauties are not a million miles away from us. So these are also available to pre-order, although I haven't seen a date attached, just they are coming. But the Foot Knights themselves are made for mid to late 13th century. So latter sort of crusades. And as such, they have a mix. See, look, male feet again. They have a mix of 8 bodies per sprue, 5 of which will have surcoats over the top, and 3 of which will just be full chain. So it's sort of post-crusade once they learned that wearing some sort of cloth covering over the top of your armor helped you not boil to death in the heat, which is a good way of doing it. And the plastics will have a variety of weapons, as you can see there, from the traditional Dane axe all the way through to massive, looks like a cleaver being wielded over the top of his head there. I have no idea what that weapon is. And yeah, I'm intrigued.
The one guy in the middle with the cross.
Hand weapon, shield, spears. Yep. Well, that's how you know Christianity's come to visit. When
that's how you know
comes,
that. That's how you know that guy was a heretic.
Yeah,
like an actual heretic, not just a 40k heretic.
Oh yeah. He wouldn't have had to have his head removed to help him see God otherwise. But interesting thing about these will be scaling wise, because obviously Baron's War plastics for a similar period are already available from Wargames Atlantic. So I'll be keen to see how these pair up with those, because I like mixing and matching a bit. Obviously a ton of heads will be on there so that you can play around with sort of the great helms and the later period. Although those helms, while everybody thinks they're the quintessential knight's helmet, they existed for like that amount of time before they went back again. So you've got sort of earlier for the 13th century, but later for the medieval period, conical helms and the sort of Phrygian cap style. Then into the flats. This guy's just wearing what appears to be a leather arming hat. So his grey helm's been knocked off somewhere. Poor fellow. They'll be doing a range of shield designs from Little Big Man Studios again, the same they did with the cavalry that will match into these. So that'll be nice to see those. And they have an upcoming fantasy head sprue that will be interchangeable with this and with the cavalry. So if people are getting into fantasy gaming again or looking for some Bretonnian style Foot Knights or stuff for Dragon Rampant, then I'm curious to see what's going to be on that sprue. I imagine it will be the more fantastical plumage, crests and stuff that the Bretonnians favoured quite a lot, but which in reality they didn't really wear so much. But they're a terrific looking set of figures again from Victrix. And I'm dying to get my hands on these. I'm not doing another period though.
You just want to
but
have
I really
them
want
to
these.
have and hold them.
You're not going to do it, but you're going to have
You
it.
have the option.
I'm going to have it. I've got the cavalry. If I get these and the cavalry, I can use them somewhere. I could have them with Anthony's dwarves as some sort of human auxiliary faction. The people who live near the little medieval dwarves who get used as chaff in the war because they don't live as long. They're like dogs in many respects. If they die, it doesn't matter.
Call it the Human Dwarf Alliance.
Yes.
When one is clearly using the other.
In big, huge quote marks.
Yeah.
But yeah. I can't wait to see those. Obviously, Victrix plastics are a thing of beauty that go from strength to strength. So I can't wait to get my hands on the sprue and get my chance to build a few of them up and see how they all come together. Right. Yes. Speaking of funky things, we can take a look at Mace Face Miniatures. So yes, a brand spanking new company. So shiny and new that while they technically have a website, it's currently not active yet. It is like a mailing list. So you can go to macefaceminiatures.com and sign up to let them know whenever it's running or something. I don't know. Don't care. This is what's fun. It is a new 15mm fantasy range, and they're going to be starting off with a female barbarian army, or shield maidens, as they're currently listed on North Star. So the artwork here, which is very 80s metal, I love it. That has been done by Kenan James. And sort of gives you an idea of what you're kind of going to be looking at, which is some sort of undead being battered down by Chaos Marauder / Conan-esque / fantasy barbarians, women. The models themselves, like I say, 15mm metal, one piece. There are 4 packs available from the initial run. This command pack, you can see here, contains 3 standards, 3 musicians, and then 4 champion types, depending on what you're going to do with them. You can see the various horns on your champions, letting you know that they're champions. Why else would they have ram's horns? A variety of weaponry. The core packs, if you will. There's one that's spear. You can see there. Mm-hmm. There's one that is hand weapon, which is a mix of sort of axes and swords, which unfortunately I don't have a nice picture of. And then there's also going to be a bow unit. So command pack is 10. The other fighting packs are 12 figures in each one. Like I say, single piece metals. Don't know who the sculptor is. I think it's Mark Copplestone, but they've not said. However, they have been made to match up to Mark Copplestone's barbarians in the same scale. Means you can mix your shield maidens with your big hairy barbarians for additional small hairy barbarian peoples. If you need a bigger set of stuff. This is the sort of the first of the fantasy armies that's going to be coming from Mace Face over the coming months. I imagine Undead won't be far behind based on that artwork. Mm. The range is called Hornblower, possibly because there's a lot of people blowing horns in it. Or maybe they're really keen on the TV series about naval combat in the 1700s. I'm not sure which one is going to pan out to be the more accurate. But you can see there's scaling from, I think that's an Et Sans resultant, Napoleonic there, but 15mm and then 28s from various North Star lines down the middle. The range itself is being produced by North Star. So I know some people might look at a website that isn't open yet on a Facebook that's been sort of kicking around for a couple of years without really doing much and get the panics. Because people are like that. If a company hasn't been around for long, then they fear new things. But you can order it all or pre-order it right now from North Star. So it's not a fly-by-night merchant who's appeared out of nowhere to scam you out of all your money for your horny ladies. It's a company that's obviously been working in the background for a little while and getting things in line to push it forward. They're going to be doing 2 different pack deals as well. So you can buy the individual metal packs from North Star. If you're a collector and just want to see them all, there's a collector's pack that is all of them. Just 1 pack of each. Here's all of the miniatures that exist. Go with God. Or if you already have plans for them, there's an army deal pack that they've made based on Dragon Rampant. So it's got 70 figures in it, and they have a breakdown of the units that you can form from that. But it's comprehensive. It's about 6 or 7 units for Dragon Rampant. Everything from your light infantry all the way through to your sort of mainline elite warriors and all points in between as well. So it's nice to see somebody else doing things in the smaller scale, especially that scale, because I think Ben has barbarians kicking around from Mr. Copplestone and is a big fan of them. I am really keen to see how they pan out and square up to Dan Mersey's travel 28s, as he calls them, which are sort of 15/18 mil. Vendel period metals, of which I have quite a few now, because I've got those for Age of Penda, but those barbarians could easily become an opposing force for them, or I could mix them and match them and do something a bit wee, geezerish, and see how they pan out. But yeah, fascinating that they've sort of come out of nowhere. Hadn't heard of them. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, there's a whole little force of tiny barbarian women ready to stab you in the groin. Certainly that British officer is about to get stabbed in the groin, which will teach him for being twice their size.
Yep.
It's like you're being attacked by some sort of aggressive Viking halfling. Nobody wants that. You know,
So the borrows escalated quickly, didn't it?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, 1 minute they're all acorn hats and looking for a needle, and the next thing you know, they're burning down monasteries in Lindisfarne, or little tiny mouse monasteries in Lindisfarne, maybe. I don't know. Could go either way. Right. Moving away from Maceface and taking a look at some stuff for the ABC Warriors, Justin.
Yeah, so Warlord are not just, focused on doing a new edition of Bolt Action. They're diving back into some 2080 goodness with the Mekana G-Men, which are looking pretty damn cool. So we've got 3 sets that you're going to be looking at here. The first one is the Mekana G-Men. So I've had a little read about these guys. The guns they're holding are nail guns. They fire 9-inch long, tungsten-coated, armor-piercing nails. I mean, it's just so 80s, so unnecessary. I love it. And the design is just really, really cool. It captures the aesthetic of, the artwork really nicely, in my opinion. On down from that, they obviously need to get around. So they have a grav car as well. And this is just pulling out those really cool, clean lines you would see on like super old cars. And I think it looks fantastic. I think you'd really, really have fun painting some of this up. And our last thing they've brought out is a bit of a weird one. So I'm going to try and say this right. The CASBRO, which stands for, and let me get this right, Crime-Related Antisocial Behavior Operatives. There's an acronym for you.
CRASBO. Everybody's favorite ASBO comes via a CRASBO. He's a big chunky boy.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
No. Well, that's just because you don't like spiders, which may be why I picked this one for you.
Oh, thank you very much, Jerry. You're so kind to me.
You're welcome. I am. I'm very kind. It could be worse. That's not scaled particularly huge. But I did manage to find a bit of art from Clint where it's being summoned in, and he's substantially bigger than all the ABC Warriors.
Oh, indeed. Indeed.
So they've
not just
debigulated him a little to set him on fire.
Yeah, not just horror, more horror.
It's a fascinating group of figures from Warlord, once again, for the ABC Warriors. I had to go poking around because this comes from a set of books I haven't read yet, which is the Pat Mills and Clint Langley Vulcan War run from about 10 years ago now. So I'm really slacking. But you've got your G-Men, the sort of governmental organization sent out to annoy and piss everybody off.
I mean, if
the TIA.
If the secret ingredient is crime, I think these guys don't like that.
No, they very much don't. But on the other hand, they also come up against the ABC Warriors coming from the other side, if you will. So it'd be fascinating to see what the actual backstory behind these guys are. Because they're a really nice set of figures. Like you say, having the likes of the grav car there as well, with a very, it's possibly not even 1920s. It's more sort of.
I didn't want to try and date it.
It's very
limo-like.
Yeah, it's got a bit of an element of like the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, the big front grille and the way too big arches and stuff like that. But yeah, it's kind of the late 20s, early 30s kind of style of mob vehicle.
Yeah, you're just missing the massive running boards on the side so the G-Men can hang off it.
Yeah.
Although apparently they don't need to because they can actually float
Yeah.
by injecting fluid directly into their veins and just bouncing into the air. So they're an unusual drop troop / hover.
Yeah,
keep
unit.
them on your good side. If you keep them on your good side, they'll be excellent for putting up pictures in your house.
That's true. Or cleaning ceilings.
Or hanging curtains.
I never realized ceilings got dirty until I was capable of reaching them, at which point I was informed that ceilings needed to be cleaned every so often, which is terrible. But yeah, it's nice to see more coming for the ABC Warriors. Obviously with the 2000 AD games that Warlord produce, Judge Dredd is always the main focus, and then they sort of go in and do little side skirty things. It feels like the ABC Warriors have possibly got more than we've seen for Slania, which seemed to be very one and done. Almost I think there was an additional wave and it almost vanished overnight. But the ABC Warriors seem to just be getting little bits and pieces out every now and again, and they're all from the more recent Langley run, with that sort of design and aesthetic that Clint brings to his artwork. So it's really good if you're in 2000 AD or an ABC Warrior fan and you've read those comics, you'll be much more au fait with those models. But I really like them. Teach us in the comments.
Yeah, because it's one of those things. I don't know a lot about it, but they look cool.
Yeah, and the 2000 AD games, Dread, Slania, ABC Warriors, Rogue Trooper. Rogue Trooper got one? No, he doesn't. We're all waiting for Rogue Trooper. We're waiting for the Nords and Souths. But they have a really good core system behind them as well, which means they're a lot of fun to play out, even if you happen to be getting run over by fatties during a riot in the middle of the street, Paul. Just say, didn't like that. That's why I shot them all. I don't want to be vomited on either. So 100% stay away from there. Maybe get some anti-grav juice, just inject it into my veins, and then just avoid the fatties and their trundle wheels altogether.
What happens if you inject that into a fatty, though?
Then they'll float around like some sort of
you get the Hindenburg.
Like a weather balloon, just coming along. 49 dead when he bursts. You just keep him away from sharp objects. Can you imagine the ripples? It just blobs down Main Street. I don't
need to think about that.
No, we don't need to think about it, but it's there now, and you're not going to be able to get rid of that anytime soon.
It's your fault.
Yes. Speaking of my fault, one very quick one before we disappear. Later this year, there will be Silver Bayonet, The Shadow of the Sphinx. I thought it was going to be November, but it may be much closer than I'm expecting currently, because North Star have got pre-orders out for a couple of top-up packs for the Silver Bayonet in Egypt. Now, these are not unusual, but certainly
very busy.
Oh, I mean, you can't keep a good man down. They used to say, if you want something done, give it to a busy man, which makes no sense to me. But apparently, North Star are just hammering everything out all the time. So for Silver Bayonet, they sell pre-built factions of around 8 models, although obviously you can construct your little harvester hunting band of ne'er-do-wells in any way, shape or form you want, within some constraints depending on the nations. But these are only 6. And the reason for that is they've been made as supplemental top-up boxes for existing factions. So there are already miniatures that look and feel the part and don't need to be Mediterraneanized for fighting in Egypt. So for the British, if you've already got the officer and the supernatural investigator, then this box will bring you up to the sort of the requisite 8 soldiers that you need to play with. There's also a French box that does the same, but that one's, it's a much bigger picture. Why were you not both the same? I hate you. That one's done if you've already got the occultist and the supernatural investigator. But it includes obviously a load of veterans who have been kicking around in Egypt, fighting the good fight, and therefore have a bit more of a native look to them. They've seen what's happening and they've just got involved in that way. So it still has the same form and function as your standard soldiers within silver bayonet. So your light and heavy infantry, your dismounted cavalry, your riflemen, and officers or cavalry, depending on the set you're picking. The British one in particular, so tiny, has a really nice Highlander. Now, they had a Highlander already, kilted and wielding a massive claymore. This one's got a huge Lochaber axe instead. And I can appreciate the Lochaber because you can always hook people off horses and then absolutely butcher them into pieces with it. And there's a lot to be said for reaching out and touching people from a distance, and then hacking them into pieces, because it's always good, clean family fun. So these are a really nice set of metal figures, once again, from North Star for the silver bayonet. And I'm really keen to see where they go, because Joe has more or less released this one into the wild. And after doing his initial sort of book, which was only meant to be just the silver bayonet, it was just meant to be the Napoleonic Wars with monsters. And then people went, but I'd really like to do Canada, or I'd really like to do Egypt or Italy or Carpathia or whatever it happens to be. So Joe did Carpathian Mountains, which was all the solo stuff and cooperative, which was great fun. But then Ash Barker's done Canada. I can't remember the gentleman who's done Italy. So other fans of the genre and game are now branching out and taking it into different places. And we've talked in the past about how it would be really nice to see a similar sort of thing taken to China, India, Asia, those sort of areas, to do bits and pieces around the harvesters in those countries, where there was obviously a lot of colonial powers kicking around, even into darkest Africa, go further into the interior, as they say, beat Stanley and Livingston there and see what horrors exist. So every now and again, somebody will just sort of pop up and go, I've done this, the silver bayonet, and it's good crack. I really like the little sunscreens on the back of the British as well, so they don't end up all red-necked, because that would be the worst thing. Yeah. Otherwise, you'd end up with a whole nation of redneck.
I'm very curious.
Lobster Tommies, I think, was the nickname.
I'm very curious to see what beasties come out of this next expansion.
They've thrown up a couple already. Obviously, mummies are in there, because it is after all Egypt. But I think there's been sphinxes and some sort of weird snake monsters. In fact, if I'm very clever, I might be able to find them.
Yeah,
he said in a high questioning voice. Or maybe not.
I'm hoping to see some like Anubis Jackal style warriors coming out from this as well. And then the table build potential for this could be a lot of fun. You know, building Egyptian temples to actually work your way through with your adventurers.
Well, if people paid attention to Hutch in last year's Terrain Fest, he initially started out making a Martian type of board and then developed into
that nice temple
modular interior temple for dungeon crawling, which is always good. There we go there. See, as if by magic, he said. Not really. It was much frantic clicking.
Power of the internet.
But so there is a host of stuff. Do you break down by book? He said. Silver Bayonet. Yeah, probably. I'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way by clicking things. British and Egyptian, that's the last ones. So what do we got? Giant scorpion, a massive snake, a sarcophagus with a mummy.
I'm digging it.
Were-jackals. Oh, you're not a million miles away from your Anubis warriors.
Yep, I'm good with this.
And skeletons animated. Ooh, and a Knight Hospitaller. Don't mind us people at home. Since we're here, we'll have a look.
Yeah,
that's really cute. Presumably needed for any sort of scenarios required in Egypt. Find a book, read aloud from it immediately. It's fine. Don't listen to people.
Yep.
And there's your were-jackals.
Oh yes, I like those. Very, very nice. And
I like the Native Scout and Knight Hospitaller. Not not even for Silver Bayonet. I just really like him. And I think I'm going to be getting him for use elsewhere, but not, and I can't state this strongly enough, not for medieval games, because I'm not starting that period.
This is going to become the new meme.
But I will get my hands on that. It has been for quite some time.
All right, I've just been oblivious. Go me.
Oblivious to the obvious. It's a 10-point flaw in your character generation. Right. That's enough news. I think we'll take a quick swish and come back and take a look at some 3D printing. All right, we're back and ready to take a look at some 3D printing. And this week, I've been hunting through 3D printing. Me. I did this all by myself and everything. I'm so good. And I was looking for some fantasy terrain for the multi-award-winning Moonstone, because I may have got all the shades recently. And I was thinking, you know what I need? I need some whimsically fantastical bits and pieces to go on a tabletop, and discovered this delight, which is Hartolia miniatures. So they do figures, including like little dragons and stuff, but I specifically want to look at the terrain because it's quite cute. And as you can see, there is a massive, massive collection of stuff. But it has a fantastical / funny feel, which lends itself both to Moonstone and to this Quars War.
Fair.
Because I was looking at some of the terrain for it recently as well, and I was thinking, oh, that would be quite nice. So you get the sort of the traditional fantasy Tudor-esque buildings, but you also get weird stuff like this. Like you two can have your own little medieval caravan to be dragging around the place, and they have a spectacularly large, I'm going to say, almost tower on wheels as well.
That's got to be a snake oil salesman.
Well, that, or it could be a load of, what you call those things? Halflings. After the borrowers rebel, they get themselves a caravan and head off. But all the buildings are accessible on the inside if you're going to be putting miniatures into them. Texturing itself, really nice on the outside. The inside, I think, are just all flat. So if you want to decorate the inside, go nuts. If you want to just spray it black and close the lid, do that. I think I know which one I'm going to be going for. So I don't need ultra realistic. I don't need detailing on the inside of buildings. Buildings are only open long enough to put units inside them or hide models, and then buildings are closed again. If I want to wallpaper something, it'll be my own house, not a miniature. Just saying, it's just how it goes. But they've been working on this for a while now, and they've got a nice range of. These are, I was going to say mundane, but possibly a better term would be more realistically accurate compared to some of the fantasy stuff.
Still quite stylized though, which I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost got a cartoonishness to the proportions.
And I imagine there'll be a serious amount of robustness when it comes to actually putting them together, especially things like this, which have chunks out of it because they are dilapidated and coming apart. But you can see they've been doing some lovely work there. You two can have I know it says medieval, that almost looks like the Addams Family townhouse has gone into disrepair. So with the porch up to the front and that sort of thing, it's a bit more, if it is medieval, it's a bit more upper class medieval. If you're allowed to have classes in medieval era. I don't know if you are. I don't think so. But if I go on and have a look at some of the other fancy bits, there's the Gothic chapel, which is very Garden of Moor-esque. But this I like, especially for Moonstone, because it's the sort of thing I would expect to see sitting in the middle of town centre, replete with glowing lampposts. It has a Edwardian fantasy feel, rather than just being just straight, here's medieval, they don't have lamps. This is a bit more fancy. And sometimes a bit of fancy is good in your fantasy.
It's quite delightful.
I like it. Look, that's where the water comes from. Imagine what you could do with fiber optic cables. I wouldn't understand, but I'm sure somebody will. Hey, you know, it's true. And there's that little mausoleum / cemetery that you can block off a whole corner of the board with.
We all know and love
And
that
still
one.
get inside.
We all know and love that particular design.
This one I think is slightly better because I think you can actually get miniatures in there.
Fair.
Unlike the Garden of Moor that has a lot of junk on the floor if you put it all together like this.
Mhm.
But always handy to have. Nevertheless, I want to find the funny fantasy stuff though. So
There was one I saw when I was having a look through. It was like a fantasy observatory, like a medieval observatory that looked really cool.
it could be. Are you going to open? Yes, you are. Ignore the D-Day, John. I'm not going for the D-Day. We're not here for the D-Day. Focus.
I have been
Focus.
looking at it on my second monitor anyway, so I'm sating myself so we don't have to talk
You're
about
just
it.
looking at Pegasus Bridge and stuff, aren't you?
A lot of really good stuff in there, though.
There is, there's lots of fancy stuff here, there, and everywhere. Where have you opened to?
It does look
Terrible machine, you. There you go.
It does look like they have some really nice big bundles you can grab.
Yeah. And like you've seen from the other pictures, even because these will just show us the completed buildings, they are sectional. So you can get in there and start hooking around. And these, I think, are spot on for a lot of games. Obviously, I am just solely looking at it from a Moonstone This Squire's War point of view right now in the old 28 mil, because it's such a unique world to play in both of them. Being able to find something that's just quirky enough to straddle the line, where I don't have to do two separate sets of terrain, is always good. And is that the Wizard's Tower you were talking about?
No. It was like an actual observatory.
Oh, an actual observatory.
One sec, hang on.
Oh, hate the sound of that.
I can fire you the link if it opens for me.
Oh, you won't be able to. I've closed everything.
Oh,
Can't
never
send me
mind.
anything. Look, there's the garderobe, so you can go and have a wee poop outside as well.
Yeah.
But these I've been really, really enjoying the sort of dedication to a theme, because they have a very distinct look throughout them. And while it does say medieval, I'm fairly certain not many medieval towns had clocks, which sort of pushes them more into the fantastical side for me.
Well, I mean, the way they've even broke down the different things that they make is really nice just for navigation. You know, going, here's what we recommend for your fantasy, for your Scandinavian.
Oh, the big Scandinavian church is gorgeous. That's based on the one up in Norway. There's no metal nails in it. People know the one I'm talking about, so I'm not going to bother bringing it up. But you can see there just the volume of models within the range of things like the medieval village, which is always good.
Yeah, excellent variety, and I like that you can get some of your like furniture and stuff in there if you want to go that far.
Yeah. Although again, I don't know if I would. I think nothing could be gained by going that far. I want to find my big walking. Where's my big walking thing? Hello, ladies with the boobs. Oh, this must randomly populate every time I open it. Because the massive wheeled push building, the fantasy tower on wheels seems to have disappeared. But you can see some of the modern bits and pieces in there as well, which I'm probably going to have to click on one just to see it, John, so he doesn't hit me with something. I'll see if I pass Pegasus Bridge. There's Notre Dame.
Ooh,
I mean, that's not going to be
before the fire.
That's not going to be a small build. No, and a whole host of.
That is definitely not going to be a small build.
Aircraft control towers as well. So yeah, they've been working away now for some time.
They're very, very prolific.
So comprehensive, yeah.
That is really cool.
That's very nice. That for a World War II table would be lovely.
That would be your World War II table.
That would be your world, yeah.
It's
Well, if you scale it down
imagine
to
the
15
28
mil,
figure in there. Oh, and even then, I mean, it's a big bit of real estate. I'd much rather keep it at 28 and fight through it.
oh, fair.
I know they weren't technically supposed to go in to
Churches and stuff
churches
like that.
and chapels and blessed bits and pieces, but there's the Carrington aerial
Yeah. I
view.
mean, the British did invite them at Monte Casino. So,
Well, yeah. But just, can you imagine going through there, doing, sweep and clear the first floor and then trying to get up to the, not sure what you would call that part, the roof of the second story, so that you can set up there all the individual components.
I mean, if
Exploded
you wanted
out.
to, you could take your black
That's how it
powder
looks like
red
now.
sand rules and run it through this.
Black powder, red earth.
Or red earth, sorry.
True.
Not
Yeah. Could do. Although, if you want to do ultra modern with it, there's going to be an awful lot more scaffolding around it.
that.
But
Fair.
it's a nice looking building.
Hefty.
Yeah.
I'm not going to annoy you, Jerry, but
No.
They do have the USS Yorktown as a model.
Do they?
Mm. Do you want an aircraft carrier to go with your U-boat?
I mean, it seems like madness, but at the same time, I can't help but think, yes. Even things like that, adding the industrial tanks and stuff to the dock area would be really nice.
Yep.
I'm not going to get distracted by the World War. You're trying to take me away from my Moonstone. We came here from Moonstone, the multi-award winning game, damn it. Now you're distracting me with World War II-isms. You fiend, you absolute fiend. And if you want to go into Eastern Europe, with your churches with the onion domes, do a bit of Barbarossa and pieces like that as well.
See, now you've distracted yourself.
Yeah, I have. But that's because I know what's coming next. So it's kind of in my mind right now. But yeah, the figures themselves look absolutely spanking gorgeous. I think the big things, the dragons, the vehicles, the buildings, all look really nice. The individual figures are a bit more stylized and cartoony. And I'm not just talking about the women with the, Stolen Madonna with the big boobs.
Huge tracts of land.
Huge tracts of land. But as you can see there's tons of fun to be had if you fancy giving Hartolia a look.
Oh, yeah.
The prices seem very reasonable as well.
Yeah,
They do.
As far as actually getting whole buildings for a couple of quid, as far as the STL file goes.
Yeah.
It's got to be worth a punt on that one. Although, again, only for Moonstone in this Quar's War. Right.
Oh, they also have Bismarck, just to point out.
Bismarck as well.
Yeah.
Do they have the hood?
No, but I also see another U-boat.
I'm not going there. You can't make me. I'm closing that. We're going to back away from it. We've got to finish off the show here. Then you can browse and spend money.
Did you win one of our prizes? Find out on our prize claim center over at OnTableTop.com. Here we list all our previous prizes and those who have won. If you see your username, fill out the form to claim your prize. All prizes must be claimed within 30 days.
So we have a couple of Kickstarters to look at. The first of which is a little bit woo, a little bit wah. It's the Wiki Wiki Wah Wah West. And this is Tales of the Old West by Effekt. So we actually met the guys at UKG this year, and the plan was to sit them down and actually get a game of this in. But unfortunately, time and tide wait for no man, and we weren't able to. But this is an Old West RPG based on the Free League Mutant Year Zero engine. And it is specifically a gritty, realistic Western game. So if you've watched things like Deadwood or 310 from Yuma, Tombstone, that sort of thing, then this is that style of game. No weirdness, no vampires, no werewolves, no aliens. It is just a RPG to replay the Wild West. And they've been playing Free League games for quite some time now, Dave and Matthew. So their podcast is based around the Mutant Year Zero engine and the games they play. And online playthroughs and things like that, which means they've got a really good grasp of the rules and how to adapt it for the Wild West. So this, set in 1873, gives you the opportunity to play various types of characters in the West. So there's 6 archetypes. You can be, the gunslinger, the lawman, the pioneer, Native American, whatever it happens to be. You can play in and around the Western area and genre in different ways as well. So your cowboys may be vaqueros, so Mexican cowboys, rather than just, settlers from the East coming in there to try and do the whole expansionist thing. And the game itself then, if you're not aware of Mutant Year Zero, runs off a D6 dice pool system where 6s are successes and 1s are generally terrible. But you can push your luck to re-roll certain things, and they've baked that in with this faith mechanic. So when you're attempting to push your luck and it goes horribly wrong, then maybe your faith becomes a little bit broken. Or if it goes right, then, clearly God's on your side, whatever God that happens to be. And it keeps you going, and you know that you're going to strike it rich as your prospector character goes. You're going to be a massive cattle owner in the not too distant future. Everything's going to be coming your way because you've got a dream. Oh, damn it. And my dream is not to die in the dirt of Tombstone. So you have all these things where the idea is to play as characters, even though the system itself is quite simple to pick up and play. Anybody who's played any of the Mutant Year Zero games knows, you don't have to think, you just have to count the number of dice you're going to be rolling. So stats and abilities, will tell you strength of 3, gunslinging skill of 3 means you get 6 dice, and then you just hope to get your 6s. So you don't have to think about that, but they put a lot of time and effort into doing the background to give people as an authentic idea of the Old West as you can. And it helps that Mutant Year Zero is a devastatingly brutal game. So people will not be shrugging off shotgun shells in the middle of the street. If you get into a gunfight with somebody, it's going to cause you problems and could end up killing you up completely. So you build your town and your community, whether it's a historically accurate Tombstone or maybe it's a fictional town of your own devising that you and friends decide to carve out your little bit of the West and attempt to tame it. It's down to you. And it looks like the book's been absolutely gorgeously put together. So the roughly 200-page book will be coming with a whole slew of westernized versions of the Mutant Year Zero core system. So the talents, abilities are all tailored towards the Wild West. There's the social aspect and the community aspect has been baked in. So in things like Vesen, you have a Castle Gyllenhaal that the society owns, and everybody works towards increasing and building it that way. And then that gives you access to other bits and pieces. I think it's going to be a similar sort of thing here, where the community that you build as a group obviously will pay into how many resources you have, what it's going to be like if there's a particularly tough winter, for example. If you've been spending a lot of time neglecting your town, not laying down stores, not making sure that you've got water wells dug and everything else. If there's drought hits, then you're up that creek that I believe is somewhere in the Old West without a relevant paddle. So all of the detail is there. I know some people have been looking at it going, I really want to add the weirdness in, but these guys are big fans of the Old West and didn't want that. And it's an easy enough thing to add if you want to just chuck fantasy on top of realism. You can do that because people can't call you out on adding weirdness to an RPG and say that it's wrong. Whereas the nuts and bolts, the historical side of the Old West, that's one where if you don't have that as a good core basis, it's very difficult to try and push your call that you should have X, Y, or Z. We should have a railway here. Why? Well, because railways, they're always in films. Yeah, but you're you're on the wrong side of the mountains for this and you're too far away for that, or whatever it happens to be. So you want to try and ground your Westerns. And if people are fans of Deadwood, that's the sort of direction they're coming at this from, which was a deeply, deeply gritty, grim place to live in, but also hilariously funny with Lovejoy. So it's always good to see that. So yeah, the guys at Effekt, I have high hopes for this. They've put in a few other bits and pieces to help mitigate the 1s and 6s sort of success and failure thing, where you can buy specific dice roll if you need to. So you might go ahead and spend some faith points to flip a dice, or to buy pips on the dice to get it up there. But you can really sort of craft the story that you want to craft with your group, and put it together in whatever way, shape or form you want. Obviously, because it's a Kickstarter, there's some nice little bits and pieces that they've thrown in here, like the trouble dice. So if you see the old Longhorn skull pop up, you're in for a bad time. And they've also got custom dice trays, not those, which are their Patreon dice trays from their podcast, but something similar to that. And they're already funded, so they've just been starting to push into adding to the wealth of resources within the book itself, whether it's new art, increased abilities, new archetypes, or whatever else it happens to be. They've got a plan in place for it, and they're pushing their way through it further and further. So yeah, if you're interested in some Wild West RPG, then you should definitely check out this one. The system, like I say, is a really easy one to get a hang of, and then you can just push on from there and take it in whatever direction that you really want to. So there are 27 days left on the Tales of the Old West, if that's of interest to you. Now, one that's going to be of interest to John, and this comes from Studio Historia, and it is a huge amount of World War II. This comes courtesy of STL files. So I will preface it with that as a background. This is a early war German force coming from Studio Historia. So all of the STL files will probably be available on their website later on. I would be very surprised if they weren't, because that is where the website started from, making 3D prints. But this is solely for the digital things, so no physical bits and pieces in here this time round. But this is the Empire of Iron and Rust, and covers 1939 to 1941. So your Blitzkrieg into Poland and France, and into Operation Barbarossa in Russia as well. And they have already smashed the doors in on their funding, and are pushing for a huge amount of unlocks. And I'm just going to keep scrolling here because there's a ton of stuff. So first off, the pledges. There's a couple of different ones. 2 individual sort of infantry-based ones. This one based on your very early Blitzkrieg standard sort of hair uniform that comes with a sort of standard get-up alongside some additional pieces of support weapons like machine guns and anti-tank rifles. And then there's also a Schützen pledge, which is similar but Panzer Grenadier, essentially.
Yep.
So you can see there, the initial set is 1, 2, 3 sections plus support. So V for Victory, Bolt Action 3rd edition, any of those, or Chain of Command, any of those style of games, these will give you a sort of a force right off the bat for it. And they are, what's that, 31 quid for that sort of group plus stretch goals. If you want more, you can combine the 2 pledges, so you can get both infantry pledges, which will add in the smocked versions. So again, 30 odd figures, 3 sections plus support. If you plan on going that way, or there's a combined just give me everything, you madmen pledge, where it gives you all of that and so much more, because they have over the past couple of years, done a ton of stuff, including British and Polish and I think Imperial Japanese as well. I'm fairly certain we looked at that. So stretch goal wise, sniper teams, medics, Kubelwagen, casualty figures, they are absolutely hammering through these at rate of knots, and there's 2 different sets of stretch goals as well, social and cash money. So this is just the cash money set. The social ones are fun because it includes a lot of named actual fighters from the time, as well as the terrain and that sort of thing. So if I get down past our, oh my lord, we're still unlocking stuff.
Yeah.
Please God, stop. Anytime now. Slowly.
Yeah.
They've gone on since I opened this page. They've unlocked a few more. But you'll be able to pick up, like I say, the core infantry. The assault includes both types. The Warmachine includes both infantry plus vehicles. And then terrain could be added to that as well. And then there's actually the Battle of Arras, which includes all of the German stuff plus the British Expeditionary Force they've done previously.
Yep.
But you can also get your hands on most of this stuff as add-ons. So if you want to pick up just the German infantry and the British infantry, and not worry about a lot of the extras, then that's doable. There you go. There's some of the stretch goals they haven't unlocked yet, thank God, because otherwise I'd never have got near the end of this. Winter stuff is coming if they get far enough along, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if they get there for the winter. But the figures themselves look absolutely top-notch. So we've looked at the Imperial stuff before, and I've seen the quality that they've been producing for several years now, since they initially started doing the 3D sculpts and prints. But here we go. There's the social media stretch goals. So Guderian's been unlocked.
Dear, not Guderian.
Mm.
The writer of his own press releases.
Best man. You can get a chaplain at 100. So if people want to do the sherry things on the socially bits, which I'm encouraged to believe is very popular with the kids, you can do that. Why not TikTok? That you can get a 250 stretch goal of Erwin Rommel with like a flossing dance or something. Sure, they'll get there. I look forward to it. Yeah. But add-on wise, if you've not seen these already, they do a ton of AFVs. So your Panzers, your Hanemags, and other staff cars are all available. I want to get down to the British Expeditionary Force because they are really nice figures. Oh my God, I forgot about the planes. Dear Lord, there's so much. So much. You can get a field kitchen, which is good for a scenario basis.
Because why not? Yeah.
And also, civilians as well. So depending on the games you're playing.
Gendarme.
Yes, they are. Yeah. You can go full of low with this if you need to. There's a Pioneer Zug. I don't need that. There's the Pioneers. There's the craft. It's all about bridging the rivers. See, they had boats. If only they brought some other boats with them on a bridge too far. Pontoon your way to victory. But yeah, the exactness of the detailing, there we go, is always really nice to see. They do a really good job on not just a basic range, which they always start with anyway, which means that you're always going to have the accessibility of a force for the tabletop, but then they get into the additionals that you may not always see kicking around. I do love the fact the Ossifer is sitting there with his teacup there.
Yep.
It's time for a brew. The most important part of any British tank in World War II was the water boiler, so they could always have a brew.
Still is.
It's nice to see. But yeah, quality of the sculpts is terrific. Like I say, if like me, you avoid the ones and zeros printings, I would give it a month or so after the estimated delivery for these before you start seeing them crop up in the store, because it's bread and butter for them now, and they look absolutely fantastic.
They do. Yeah.
And if if you want to pick up any of the other bits, you can see them all there, including my favorite camo scheme, the contour camo. You too can have arguments over the right color of that. Slate grey, blue grey, which is it? We're not
When
going
the
to get into
Tank
that
Museum
debate now.
said they got it wrong, so
Yep. Everybody says they get it wrong. I've got some color chips of paint kicking around here somewhere to help me match. And even then, I still don't match them properly. But anyway, so yeah, if you're interested in some World War II Germans, there's a ton of stuff here. A lot of stuff, but all early war. And the fact that they've listed it as such leads me to believe that we will probably see some non-early war in the future from them as well. But combine that with the existing ranges, and they've got a very, very comprehensive looking chunk of fun for World War II, especially with so many people just getting into it these days with the new releases of rules and new editions of rules. So great to see. There are only 9 days left, but it is, as you can see, massively funded already. So if that is your bag, you can pop over and take a look at the Empire of Iron and Rust from Studio Historia. And that wraps us up for another week. We shall be back next Friday for more of the same. And we'll be around on Sunday morning as well for our Cult of Games members over at OnTabletop.com. If you want to visit us there, you can. If you haven't already become a cultist, there's a 30-day free trial you can join in on. And don't forget to comment on this video over there if you want a chance to win that Hobbit board game, The Hunt for the Arkenstone. Until next week, have a great week of gaming. Bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.